Okay, welcome back. So I want to briefly give you a little bit of an overview of what we're going to be doing with Git and GitHub. I mentioned this a little bit in the last video. Basically, our progression here is that we've already talked about conceptually what Git and GitHub are. We talked a little bit about why you would use it, how it's useful. What we'll do next is see the very, very basics. So for the first two videos, or I guess the second and third video, if you include the first intro, we won't be dealing with GitHub at all. So we're not sharing code with anyone, we're not getting anyone else's code, we're just using it locally as a way to, save our changes and revert back to old versions of code. So these two videos will cover some really important commands. And then we're going to talk about GitHub. And we're going to talk about taking code down from GitHub. So I'll give you some code, an app that you can then clone onto your machine and run on your machine. And then also you'll be able to push that code or push your own code up to GitHub to share with other people so that they can clone it down. So that will be what we finish up with. And there'll also be an exercise in there as well. For now, we're starting right here. So three main commands I'm going to talk about. As I mentioned in the last video, if you're using Cloud9, which everyone should be, if you're not, you're a little bit on your own as far as installing Git. It's not terribly complicated, but sometimes you run into problems if you're missing certain dependencies, if you've already installed it before. It's a little bit, it's not fun sometimes. So luckily, using Cloud9, we already have Git installed, as we saw here. Don't worry about the version, as long as you see something here that isn't Git not found or command not found. So the first thing we have to talk about is Git Init. So right now, I'm inside of a directory called Git that I created. And I'm going to actually make another directory and just call it intro. Or let's call it Git intro. CD into that. And inside of this, I'm going to create a really simple application. I wouldn't even call it an application, but I'm going to add some files. And let's pretend that it's a gigantic application that I want to track. I want to use Git to track my changes and revert back if I make a mistake. I want to be able to step by step see the code that I wrote every day or every time I committed changes. To do that, I first have to tell Git that this Git intro even exists, that I want it to care about it. So Git isn't just always watching every file on our computer. That would be pretty crazy. Instead, we have to manually tell it, initialize Git in this directory. Basically, get ready Git, I'm going to use you in this folder. And it only works in that folder and any folders that are inside of that folder. So it won't work if I initialize Git. Let me make sure this refreshes here. There we go. If I initialize it inside of Git intro right here, and I'm tracking all the code inside of Git intro, that works fine. But it won't track any changes that I make over here or over here. If I wanted to watch all of this together in one repository, if I wanted Git to know about everything here, then I would initialize Git in this web dev bootcamp folder. Usually you don't want to do that though. Usually you have one repository for one project. So one repo, that's what a lot of people will say, repo rather than repository, per project. So this is our demo project, which is called Git intro. And the first thing that I'll do is just make a file. So I'll just call this app.js. Let's open that file up. So nothing involving Git yet. And let's add something in here. So just a single line, console.log. This is my complex app. Just so we have something to work with. So pretend again that this is a big app. Okay. So the first command again is git init, and that's all we have to run. So we just want to make sure we're in the right directory, git intro, and then we run git init for git initialize. And then you can see, I get a little printout. It says initialized empty git repository in, and then the name of the directory that I'm in, git intro. Also, notice that it added this .git. We haven't really talked about this much, but things that begin with a .git, if I type ls, it looks like there's only app.js here. But if I type ls-a, you can see there's actually a folder called .git. And those are hidden folders. In this case, just one, .git. So when we run git init, what it actually does is it makes a directory, it's hidden, called .git, wherever I run that git init command. and it's going to track all of our changes. That's basically the magic. It's where all of Git exists. So if I'm working on a huge project with 20 different files and I've committed my code a bunch of times, I've been working on it for years maybe, and I delete that .git folder, I potentially have lost everything. If I didn't have it backed up, if I wasn't using GitHub, I would lose all of the changes, all my history. So it's important that you don't screw with that, but usually you won't even see it unless you're looking for it. In the event that you do want to get rid of Git, if you messed up and you accidentally initialized a Git repository on your whole computer, you did it on the home directory, or you did it up here on Web Dev Bootcamp, or whatever your equivalent name is, and you don't want Git to track every single file on your computer at once, then you want to remove this. And you would remove it just like any other directory, rm-rf. Okay, so that was a side note. The next command I'm going to show you, I actually haven't added here. I'm going to add it now. Git status. So this is an important one. It's not really an action. It doesn't tell Git to do anything. It basically asks Git for a status. And it's a really common thing to type before you do anything else. So you usually check in with Git, you say, what's your status? And then it will tell you something, and then you do something based off of that. So right now, if I type git status, all that it tells me, and there's going to be a lot of language here that's pretty confusing at first. It says on branch master. We don't need to worry about what that is. All that you should know here, see in parentheses, I see master. That tells me that I'm on the master branch. What a branch is, we're not going to talk about just yet. Initial commit, that means that I haven't really made a new commit. I haven't done anything yet. And untracked files, app.js. Nothing added to commit, but untracked files present. So the first thing that I want to do is show you what happens when I add a new file. So let's add a file called cats.js. And if I type git status now, it now tells me there's two untracked files, app.js and cats.js. And the reason that it says they're untracked, this is actually really important to the way that Git works, is that just by initializing a repository in a folder, it doesn't automatically know about or doesn't automatically track every file and every change that I make. The way that Git works is it's kind of a two-step workflow. So I can have a bunch of files, but maybe I only want Git to know about 2 or 3 of them. So a common example is if you're working on a project that has some sensitive application codes or some secret codes that you need that you don't want to share on GitHub, that you don't want to publish, what you can do is tell Git to watch the other files but ignore your secrets file or ignore your environment file, whatever it's called. There might be some sensitive data that you don't want Git to know about. So by just initializing it, Git tells us, I know there are these files, but I'm not tracking them. So if we want Git to track these files, what we need to do is use the next command, which is git add. So I mentioned it's a two-step workflow. We add the files. We tell Git, here are the files I want you to track, and then we commit. And commit is basically making a checkpoint in time with the changes that you've added. It will make more sense once we get a little more practice. So let's start by using git add. So if I type git add, I don't want to just hit enter yet. What I can do is either add one file at a time, like this, git add app.js. And now if I type git status, you'll see something changes. It says untracked file, still cats.js. But now it says changes to be committed, new file, app.js. So what this means is that when I run git commit, which I'll do in just a bit, this is what is going to be saved. The fact that we made a new file called app.js. So let's try committing this. And what that will look like is in the future, I could come back to this point in time where all I did was create app.js. I haven't added cats.js, so that change isn't going to be committed. So if I reverted back to this in the future, once I'd made a bunch of changes, all I would see is app.js with one line in it. But cats.js wouldn't exist because Git isn't tracking it. It's not going to commit it right now. Okay, so I'm going to type git commit -m. And that -m, I believe it's short for dash message. it allows you to just type in a commit message right here. And this is really important. Every commit needs to have a message that describes what the commit is, or what the thing is that you're saving, what the checkpoint is. So if this was a novel, we might have something like finish chapter 5. If this was an application, we might have add user model or add authentication. In this case, I'm going to add, let's do add app file, something like that. And it's conventional to have your commit messages be in present tense. So not added app file, but add app file. Or change app file, remove X, Y, whatever it is. Okay, so git commit -m. You don't have to do it with -m. If you just hit git commit, it will open up a text editor, and then you can type something into the editor and hit enter or save. But let's just do it like this. Notice it says here after we commit it, one file changed. And now if I type git status, you'll see that the changes to be committed here, new file app.js has gone away because we committed it. And Git doesn't have anything else to keep track of. There's no changes that we've made. The only thing that it's complaining about, it's not really complaining, but it's saying that there is a file, cats.js, that is not being tracked. So let's now add that. Git add cats.js. And let's commit again, or let's do git status. You can see changes to be committed, the fact that we made a new file, cats.js. So we'll do git commit -m add cats file. And I accidentally hit enter. Make sure I have that quote there. Now if we take a look at git status, we get a new message. It says nothing to commit, working directory clean. What that means when it says working directory clean basically means the repository, Git knows about everything that we want it to know about. There's no changes to be made. There's nothing to be committed. There aren't any untracked files. Git is one with our code at this point. All right. So now let's say that I have my application. I'm going to open up the cats file as well. And let's suppose that this is obviously a larger application, and I make some changes. So in here, console.log meow save. Now if I type git status, I changed the cats.js file. You'll see that it tells me changes not staged for commit, modified cats.js. So Git's telling me the cats.js file was modified. Before, it was saying that cats.js was created. It was a new file. And if we removed cats.js, Git would tell us, here's a change that I know about. Cats.js was removed. So modified cats.js. Let's add in a commit again. And if I try and commit right now, I can add any message in here. It won't actually do what we want, because notice that it's saying changes not staged for commit and no changes added to commit. So if I commit right now, I haven't actually told Git I want to commit any changes. Remember that it's a two-step process. So we don't just add a file one time. What we do is actually every time we commit, we tell Git which files to add to that commit. So that means that rather than having one blanket commit that's more like a traditional save, like if I just hit save, it would save everything. Rather, I can tell Git, okay, this is an Express app with 20 files. Let's take the 2 model files and add them and commit that. And we'll say we added in 2 new model files. Then let's take our 2 route files and add those together and commit them together. And we could say we refactored middleware. Whatever we did, we can group files together and add them in pieces and commit them together, but not have to commit everything all at once. So in this case, all I'm going to do is add that file again, git add cats.js. Then I'm going to do git commit, and this time all that I did was add meow to cats. Now I type git status, nothing to commit, working directory clean. Okay, so let's do one more thing. Let's add one file in. So we'll do touch dogs.js, And if I type git status again, you can see it's telling me that it's not even tracking dogs.js. So I can add that, git add dogs.js. I'm not going to commit yet, but now if we take a look, it's telling us, all right, when you do commit, I'm going to commit the fact that you made a new file called dogs.js. Now let's go and change our app.js a little bit and add another console.log, just like that. Save. I do have to save in order for any of this to work, and I type git status. Now it tells me changes not staged for commit, the fact that you modified app.js. Let's also modify cats.js, console.log. Let's do per save, type git status again, and now you can see it tells me that I modified app.js and I modified cats.js, but I'm not staging them for committing. They're not ready to be committed. The only thing that will be committed is the fact that I made a new file called dogs.js. So what I'm going to do is commit once now, and in this commit I'm just going to say add dogs file. Type git status, tells me no changes added to commit, 2 changes are not staged for commit, so let's add them together. And what I could do is say git add app.js and then cats.js separately, or I can do this, git add dot, and that will add all of the changes not staged for commit. So in this case, both files. Now if I type git status again, now it tells me changes to be committed, app.js and cats.js. So I'll commit them together, and usually you would put some code here that talks about the feature that you did or what you added or updated or whatever you did. In this case, it's kind of trivial, but let's just say update files, which is really not a great commit message if you're actually working on a substantial project. Okay, and then let's type git status one more time, and it tells me nothing to commit, working directory clean. Okay, so far all that I've showed you how to do is basically adding checkpoints in time that we can go back to, but I haven't shown you how to go back to that, and that's coming up next. But let's do a quick recap. So the very first thing we have to do if we want to use Git is we have to run Git Init. That will initialize Git, a new repository in a given directory. And you do want to be careful about that. You don't want to be making a repository, usually you don't want to be making a repository in the very top level directory of your computer. Usually it's one project per repo. Technically, you can use it however you want, but that would be pretty crazy if you were watching your entire machine with one repository. And then the next command we saw was git status. And that doesn't really do anything, doesn't tell Git to do anything. It just asks for an update. Basically, we're asking Git, what's the current status? Has anything been added? What's ready to be committed? Are there any changes? That sort of thing. And then these two are really important. These are the bread and butter of Git. You'll type them all the time. So we add the changes. We basically select what we want to add to this checkpoint in time, and then we commit the changes to add that checkpoint. And we give it a message so that in the next video, when I show you how to view the commits, we'll actually see those messages, and future you will be very thankful that you hopefully wrote nice messages that are descriptive so that you know what each checkpoint, what each commit does. Okay, so in the next video, we're going to talk about git log and git checkout.